Volume 3 of Toshiden finally comes out next week, which means Season 3 of the Toshiden podcast is coming as well. To celebrate, we're going to take a look at one of the more popular urban legends featured in the first volume, one that I haven't covered here on this channel before. She's also one of my personal favourites, the legend of Teketeke. Teketeke's story as we know it today generally comes in two parts. The first is like her origin story, while the second is one of the most common stories of how she haunts people today. So, let's head right in and check them out. Part 1. This happened one cold winter morning in Hokkaido, where a heartbreaking incident occurred at a certain railway crossing. Police and forensic investigators arrived at the scene, having received a report that a female high school student had just been hit by a train at the crossing. It was thought that she died instantly, so no ambulance was called. The police and forensic investigators began gathering the pieces of her body right away. Her ankles, her hips, her thighs, her shins. Then, the upper half of her body. It really did appear to be an instantaneous death. But as the forensic investigator was putting the body into the car, he heard a voice. "Help. Help." He looked in the direction of the voice and was shocked. The upper half of the female high school student's body that he'd just put into the car was talking to him. It was thought that the girl died instantly, but in the freezing chill of Hokkaido, the girl's wounds froze over the instant she was hit, and so her upper torso was still able to talk. "Help! Help!" Her voice started to get weaker and weaker, and no matter what they did, there was nothing they could do to help her like this anyway. Thinking that there was nothing he could do, the forensic investigator quietly placed the vinyl sheet over the girl as she continued to cry for help. Part 2. A male student was walking home from school. He looked up and saw the figure of a woman standing by the telephone pole several meters ahead. Was she waiting for someone? As he got closer, the boy noticed that she was quite beautiful. She looked in his direction and smiled. Against his better judgment, the boy was happy and smiled in return. But in an instant, that smile froze. The woman who stepped out from behind the telephone pole had no lower body. Teketeke, teketeke, teketeke. Using her elbows, the woman ran towards him with incredible speed. So Teketeke is up there with Kuchisake Onna and Hanako-san of the Toilet as one of the most famous Japanese urban legends, and there are almost endless variations to her story. It's also interesting because there's no one single story that acts as a full legend, like Kuchisake Onna or Mary-san. Teketeke's story is pieced together by several different stories, all of which tell different parts of her tale. It's not known exactly how the legend of Teketeke came about, but some have surmised that she's just a variation of Kashima-san, or perhaps a mashup of several legends, such as Kashima-san and Kuchisake Onna, and then set at a Hokkaido railway crossing. The first part of Teketeke's story is considered to be her origin story. This is how she came to be. She was a high school girl from Hokkaido who got hit by a train at a railway crossing and cut in half. Only she didn't die, thanks to the freezing cold which sealed her wounds and allowed her to continue living in horrific pain for quite some time after. She's then ignored by the forensic investigator who thinks there's nothing he can do for her, allowing the audience to build some sympathy for her plight. The next time we see Teketeke is where her ghostly legend comes into play. Here, she's revealed as a ghost, or a yokai, depending on who you talk to, that's missing the lower half of her body, and she chases after people on her elbows, which creates the teketeke sound in Japanese. This telephone pole version is just one of many, Other versions exist where she appears above a window frame, and she's often seen carrying a sickle as well. The window version goes as follows. A-kun forgot something at school, so he returned to the empty classroom after everyone had gone home. Finding what he was looking for, A-kun was relieved, but when he looked up at the window, he saw a woman looking at him, resting on both her elbows. A-kun was fascinated by her, and the woman put both her hands on the window frame and pushed herself forward. At that moment, A-kun froze. The woman was only an upper torso. She had no lower body. She took aim at A-kun and propelled herself towards him on her elbows with incredible speed. Teketeke. So there are several key points about Teketeke that generally remain the same across all the different versions of her story. First is that she was originally a high school girl from Hokkaido. Second is that she died at a railway crossing after being hit by a train. Third is that she has no lower body, and as such, approaches people with incredible speed on her elbows, and this is what creates the Teketeke sound of her name. As with many other legends, Teketeke occasionally appears with slightly different variations. Sometimes she's an office lady and not a student. Other times she's hit by a car and not a train. Sometimes she becomes a ghost, and other times a yokai. There are reportedly even versions where she's a man. But the one constant that never changes, the one aspect that always remains the same, is the speed with which she chases her victims on her elbows. It's said that she can reach speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour, so once she's set her sights on you, there's no escaping her. Teketeke's mode of attack varies, but she's often known to use a sickle, just like Kuchisake Onna. And, just like Kuchisake Onna cuts her victims to resemble herself, Teketeke is also known to cut the lower half of her victims' bodies off when she attacks, so they end up looking just like her as well. In some versions, it's said that just by hearing her story, she'll appear to you within 3 days. There doesn't appear to be any way to escape this, but some legends also state that you can repel Teketeke herself just by yelling, "Go to hell." Like many other supernatural urban legends, you can find movies based on the Teketeke legend as well, such as the aptly named Teketeke and Teketeke 2, which you can even find subbed on YouTube right now with a very simple search. She also often features in horror manga, anime, and even video games. A new game featuring Teketeke just came out on Steam a few short weeks ago, so if you want to run from her yourself, go check it out. Teketeke's legend is enduring, and she's likely to stick around for quite some time to come. But what do you guys think about this one? What's your personal favourite Japanese urban legend? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.